discussion, A Flicker in the Dark by Stacy Willingham. Also, this is the first leg of a Europe trip. I am in Istanbul airport right now, having a stopover on my way to Zurich. So I'm going to discuss the book and I'm going to discuss the trip as I usually do when we do trips. I try to give a little bit of perspective. I think these trips are important because, like everything else in the hedge fund business, it offers a different perspective. It offers hopefully some inspiration. And what's most important is just to see things from a different angle. I think in the knowledge business, it's really often how we arrange the facts. It's not just the facts themselves, it's how you arrange them. Now, this is not a political statement, of course, but more of a inspiration statement. If you want to learn something, if you want to try to see where things are going, if you want to make money by investing in wealth creating companies, it's worth sometimes looking at things from a different perspective. That's what travel helps. That's why books are so important. This is not even on podcast. It's March 29, 2023. This is Cryptelco. There is no update right now. The markets are open in the US, but we're here in the evening in Istanbul. So I'm not going to go into details about the markets because things will change. For the year, we're up 53.8. The market is up 3.5. We're outperforming by 50.3%. I'm going to start with the travel and then get to the book. So this is the first leg of Europe travel. The idea is to spend some time in Switzerland. It's a private trip with my parents, and then hopefully on the way back spend a few days in Savannah and Charleston in South Carolina with Zovina. That's the idea. Let's see where it takes us. My first impressions here, it was an overnight flight from San Francisco to Istanbul. Istanbul is a pretty interesting place. I'm just at the airport. I'm not in the city, so I'm not even close to understanding what the city is about. Just from the airport, I think one of the things that is very prevalent sort of in the Middle East and Far East, not Far East, China, but sort of all these regions here, around here, Dubai and Turkey and so on and so forth, which is very high luxury, very high standards, but not so good of a service. So the people are still lagging a little bit behind the luxury. I think this would be my first impression here. It took me a long time to get decent Wi-Fi, things along those lines. The bathrooms are not the cleanest, but then you have very high level duty-free shopping and European luxury brands, and all of that stuff is of course at the highest level, sometimes even higher than what you would find in, let's say, the US or in Switzerland. Other than that, I don't have much to say. Again, I'm in the airport, so I will check back in when I'm on the ground in Europe, in Switzerland, and then go from there. So let's talk about the book. Stacy Willingham, A Flicker in the Dark. It's a thriller. It's a novel. I would say it's a very light novel. It's it's akin to watching a Netflix show or a movie. It's well written, interesting, convoluted. It's the kind of book you're gonna keep asking yourself, who's the murderer, who's the one, right? That's the kind. It's that kind of book, and she did a good job in doing that. I think that to me is, while entertaining, of course, it's not really interesting. I mean, there's not a lot of insight or inspiration or any of those things. But I think what Stacy does well, I think there's two things that I want to point out here. One is she gives a very good perspective of vulnerability of a woman. So I think that's, I don't know if that was her intention, but her writing style is, well, sometimes a little cumbersome, to be honest. She describes sceneries and details, like the way the hair falls in the wind. Like, she's that kind of writer, and I think she overdoes it a little bit in terms of maybe her attention to detail, then mixed up with the suspense of the novel, sometimes doesn't fit well. But other than that, I think she does a really good job, like in terms of expressing the vulnerability of a woman. Like, for example, in the very early stages of the novel, she writes about, let's say, she writes about how a woman always has that sort of lingering feeling of somebody's watching her, somebody is trying to take away something from her, maybe her life even, but there's a little, like, not fear, but this lingering feeling, like, and somebody once told me, maybe it was Joe Rogan on a podcast, somebody told me, or I heard it somewhere, that when you're in an elevator with a 6'5", 250-pound guy, you feel vulnerable, right? No matter what. I mean, he can be the nicest guy in the world. He can be, Glover Teixeira, or he can be, John Jones. I mean, a very nice guy and a very mean guy. You don't know, but you're still somewhat intimidated. Well, that's how women always feel, because they are physically smaller and weaker, no matter what. I mean, no matter how much self-defense and all of that they take, they're not going to be able to fight most men. Now, fortunately, our society has built lots of norms around that, and I would hope that most women, at least in most societies in the world, I mean, this transcends even, let's say, Western democracies and human rights, that women are safe, right? We have these norms built over thousands of years that you don't just go and hurt weaker people and stuff like that. So hopefully, again, I can't speak for women. I'm not a woman, but I have to just relay my experience. Excuse me, my thoughts here to people with better experience. But I still think that it's an interesting aspect. Again, this is about the novel, and I think what Stacy does well is look. One of the themes of the novel is to take away somebody's liberty or take away something from somebody, and that line is very blurred. That line is not very clear. Okay, what is my space? What is your space? Where does my liberty start and yours end? Am I with you? Are you my friend? Are you my enemy? Like, those things are incredibly blurred in this novel, which would be the second thing that I think is a good takeaway here, which is again, like, you don't know who your friends are. You don't know who your family is. Family doesn't mean family. I mean, family is, and I say that a lot, even from my own history. Family is a very ephemeral thing. I think it's a fallacy to believe that family is something you can rely on, or that it gives you some sort of support, or all of those things are a fallacy, in the sense that just being with family absolutely doesn't mean anything other than that there is a slight chance that maybe you will find some support. I've told this to my partner Zominar many times. The only person you can count on is me, because I was the only one in your life, from your closest people, from your own family, that I'm the only one that chose to be with you. And that's very simple. So if you forget all the stuff, the blood relation, the excuse me, the sort of the norms that we've built over thousands of years in terms of how we're supposed to relate to kin, to those sort of things, and you just look at how people act and how people behave. Well, one thing you can say is that the ones who choose to be with you, the ones who voluntarily choose to be with you, well, they probably have a better chance, or you have a better chance to actually be in a deeper relationship with them. This is what I'm trying to say here. So again, it's the choice. It's not like if you're born into a family and you have siblings, your parents, yes, they had a choice, of course, to have you or not have you, but they still didn't have a choice in terms of what kind of personality they wanted from you. Well, the spouse has. So the spouse, I think that's why I think marriage, or whatever you want to call the union between people these days, to me, that's the sacred thing. That is the absolute sacred thing. And this is not the main theme in this novel. Again, this novel, actually, it's not even clear what Stacy is trying to achieve, other than just having an entertaining novel. Maybe that's all there is. But I think very, very interesting when you go through a novel and you end up asking yourself this fundamental question, which is, okay, who can I really, absolutely, ultimately, with no doubt, or if you put a gun in my face, you have to count on one person. I think it should be your spouse, because that is your best shot. Now, that doesn't mean we have a divorce rate of over 50%. We have a lot of negative arguments for exactly that point. So I wouldn't say that this is a sort of no-brainer, right? But is it your brother? Is it your kids? It's not clear. So that's why I think it's very, very important to classify this question: who are you going to stick with? Okay, and the answer is most likely your spouse. So this is just the family's ephemeral. I want to get back to the book here, because otherwise, I mean, this is a whole podcast series on its own. Who should you stick with and who can you trust and blah blah blah. The most important thing is that you understand that your personality and who you are, that line is defined around who you are. And yes, the lines could be blurred. There could be a blurred line between who you are and who other people's are, what other people's, let's say, destiny, or how other people relate to you, what happens to other people might be influenced by what you do, and vice versa. I acknowledge all of these things. But I still want to bring this point home, that no matter what, it is you and your decisions that influence what happens around you. I think this comes across in this novel. No matter how blurred the main character is with other people's destinies and how other people's actions influence her destiny, she still has the responsibility for her own actions. I think this is very important. Also political. I mean, I also keep saying that one of the biggest problems of our society currently is that we don't have a clear line anymore, or that somehow people try to blur that line between who is responsible for their own actions and who isn't, and so on and so forth. So to summarize, A Flicker in the Dark, it's an interesting, entertaining book. I would say it's not the most deepest book. I mean, this is not a Steinbeck novel or something along those lines, or a Cormac McCarthy novel. It's a light read, suspense, murder story, that kind of thing. So that's all fine. I think what comes across is the definite. It's a book about identity in a non-identity political way. I mean, maybe that's a nice way to say it. Okay, this is not about identity politics at all. However, the concept of identity comes around, and you ask yourself, okay, where does the line blur between who I am and what I do and what my actions cause and other people's actions? This is important. I think you learn from this book. You learn that in the end, no matter what happens to you starts with you and ends with you. Thank you.